To be an effective negotiator, you have to focus more on the other party than on yourself. Hi, this is Stendall, publisher of Customer Engagement Media and the author of the Customer Engagement Manifesto. So happy that you're here. Today I want to talk all about the subject of negotiations. I think you're going to get a lot out of this video. This is a video that's for somebody who doesn't have a clear structure in place for how to go about conducting negotiations when you're working with a new prospect. This is for somebody who's looking for fresh strategies to be more successful in negotiations. If you want to figure out what some of the top mistakes are in negotiations and avoid them, this is for you. If you have trouble dealing with objections, this is for you. And if you really just want to learn how you can be more successful overall with negotiations, this is for you. This is not for you if you're looking for underhanded, get-rich-quick type tactics to persuade somebody to buy from you. This is not that type of video. So let's get started. There is an important subject at hand, the topic of negotiations. You are not in business unless you sell something. And in order to sell something, you need to negotiate what it is that you are selling for what it is the market is willing to pay for. And quite often, if there isn't any pushback, it quite frankly means that you're not charging enough. So consider charging a little bit more and being willing to negotiate and find out where is the market threshold for what it is that you sell and the value that you're able to deliver. So there are a few basics that I want you to keep in mind. Basic number one is you have to be prepared. What does being prepared really mean? It means knowing as much about the person you're negotiating with and their company as possible. Understand what their major goals are. Where are they headed? What have they strategically tried to accomplish and failed, or tried to accomplish and were successful at? What is it that they're passionate about? What are their goals? What keeps them up at night? What is the key emotional needle movers that you need to be aware of from their position? The more you know, the better. The more you understand their relative strengths and weaknesses to the outcomes that they are shooting for, the better position you will be to fill in the gap that they are missing. If it's possible for you to speak to some of the different users, influencers, and decision makers in the organization to gather multiple points of view so that you can reference that in your negotiation to make your statements more compelling, to showcase a better ROI, the better. So the first rule here is you need to make sure that you understand your customer and also make sure that you're negotiating with the right party. If they don't have the ability to make a binding decision whether to move forward with you or not, you may have wasted your time. So that's step number one. Step number two is you have to walk into the negotiation with a strategy. What are the parts of the offer that are non-negotiable from your perspective? What are the parts of the offer that are negotiable? What are some of the added value bonuses that you can add to sweeten the deal? How can you logically communicate and justify why you offer savings? If you don't justify why you offer a savings when you discount, then their customer will never take your list price seriously. So understand how you can justify savings, understand how you can sweeten the deal through bonusing and incentivizing them to take action. These are some of the key things that you want to have at your fingertips. You also want to figure out what your opening bid is and what your floor price is. So let's talk a little bit about this. So step number one in your mind is you really have to understand what is the value you offer relative to the problem that you're trying to solve. And understand that from your competitor's perspective as well. We need to make sure that we're in the right ballpark in terms of articulating the price point, the retail price point relative to the problem they have and relative to what the market is already functioning at. So that's step number one. Step number two is we need to make sure that we have the appropriate opening bid. So the opening bid is what it is that you are going to come to market with into the conversation with, showing that you are really interested in moving forward. So you're not going to open with per se your complete retail price unless you feel that that's a standard by which it's fair and acceptable to open in your marketplace. So you're going to have an opening bid that's saying, look, I really want to work with you. This is what I've done. This is the package I've put together. This is my opening bid. So now in your mind, you need to know what your floor is. What is it that you will not cross if they continue to negotiate and negotiate and negotiate? What is it that you will not cross? Now identify what are the tools that you can use to sweeten the deal. So these are the bonuses that you can offer. How you can justify savings when you do give a discount. Make sure that there's a logical reason behind it. These are some of the basic aspects of your framework that you need to consider. Now, as you go through the negotiation process, what you're going to be looking for is a couple things. One, when to strategically add a bonus and to bonus stack as you go through a process. And two, understand what are the small things that you can give away to show flexibility and understanding and respect for the person that you're working with. Very, very important. You want to make sure you know what you're going to focus on, which is non-negotiable. What is it that you are willing to negotiate and how much of it you're willing to negotiate. And I recommend that you have some easy things to give in on that are not part, of the primary offer that you have. So those are a couple key things. Now, the third point, know when to stop talking. If you talk too much, you're not listening. And if you're not listening, you do not understand the perspective that your customer is coming to the table from. Point number one. Point number two, if you talk too much, it signals that you're nervous. Confident people do not talk all that much. They say what they need to say. Everything is carefully measured and said in a confident manner. Step number three, once the customer has actually made the purchasing decision in their mind, every extra word you say starts to detract from that purchasing decision. So you have to know when to stop talking, when the deal was made. Now, as you are negotiating and you have an idea in your mind and your customer is going to have an idea in their mind, you're obviously going to be trying to find some common ground. And as you get closer to finding common ground, it becomes all the more important to be able to articulate how you do two things really well. One, you reduce the time to getting the result. And two, you make the process easier through any kind of form of automation. You make life easier for the customer, so it's less of a hassle. These two factors are often very great recipes for upsells to the core offer, but can also be factored into the core offer in some types of bonuses that make sense. So let me now talk to you a little bit about the next couple points. You want to also mind your manners and be respectful. Because you see, as you're going through this negotiations process, sometimes it might get a little heated. Sometimes it might not be as friendly as you want it to be. You have to understand where you are in this overall process and keep your cool. The one that keeps the cool is the one that is going to be in a superior position, because the other one is going to be viewed as losing control, and anyone who loses control is clearly at a disadvantage from negotiations and emotionally just between individuals. The one that loses control is clearly not in a good position. So you want to make sure that you are not being defensive, that when there are objections that occur, you want to make sure you can understand specifically what they are, get clarification, and as you resolve those objections, in your mind, you want to be able to articulate, if I could solve this problem, would you be able to move forward? It's an if-when combination, which is it's a pretty standard negotiation sales methodology, because really what we're trying to do is we're doing a trial close. We're trying to find out if something would be satisfied, would you move forward? Now, the astute customer is going to see this, and they might call you on it. In fact, I was just buying some furniture yesterday, and at the time that I was buying the furniture, someone tried a trial close on me. They did the if-when. And it just so happens that I had fun with the lady. I said, hey, that's a nice trial close. If I do this, would you do this? And then she laughed, I laughed, and we ended up having a good conversation. And in the end, I had a price for what I was willing to pay. She could realize that she wasn't going to get too far with me, and we ended up meeting at a reasonable number. The next thing to keep in mind is that while you might have a number in your mind that would be really great to accomplish, understand that making the deal happen is going to involve an honest give from your side. You need to show that you really want the business. So be willing to go a little bit above your thresholds. Now, that doesn't mean changing your floor. It means it's the difference between a fantastic deal from a margin standpoint and a great deal from a margin standpoint. I do believe in superior margins because ultimately that allows you to provide a superior service to your customers. But in my case, I was willing to increase the amount that I would pay for some furniture by $100. And it was a little bit more than my initial calculation for what I wanted. But at the end of the day, it was something that I felt was fair, still in the realm of being fair. Figure that out for yourself. The next thing that I want you to keep in mind is to figure out where the influence lies in the organization so that you can, one, make sure you're talking to the right person, but two, make sure you're utilizing the right methodologies and the techniques to persuade who it is that you're talking to. Of course, legally and ethically, if you feel that you can serve the customer, I want you to persuade them, because that's what selling is about. Anything less is essentially order taking. So you need to figure out what points relative to the solution you have a unique point of distinction where you are really, really good in what it is that you do and certain dimensions that are very important to the customer. And the more they can understand that and acknowledge that, the more you will win over your negotiations. Make sure that you have a strong foundation. Make sure that you can demonstrate the value you provide wherever possible. And you also want to be the person driving the conversation. Be the one asking the questions. The one that asks the questions is the one that navigates through the whole negotiation. So that's another key point in mind. Now, if you're on the other side of the equation and someone is negotiating well with you, one of the things that customers can often do is start to break things down into bite-sized pieces and to figure out how they can get the best deal in individual pieces so that the summation of the overall components is in fact the best deal. Now, from the sales perspective, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go down into the itsy bitsy component level because you basically open up yourself to many more negotiations that you need to. What you need to stay is at the solution level, the outcome level. Don't go down into the bits and bytes of every little component of your offer where they say, how much if I just want that? Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about that one. Okay, we locked and loaded on that one. Now let's move to the next one. See, I'm showing you both sides of the equation from the sales perspective and from the buying perspective. From the buying perspective, you do want to take a look at the components and view that relative to the total solution. From the sales side, you don't, because you open yourself up to additional risk in terms of the engagement. And at the end of the day, this is all about driving value for customers. But depending on the sales situation that you're in, for example, I was in a situation where there is a special procurement organization inside of this bigger company, and their whole job is to drive discounts. And going into that type of a scenario requires that you have a very good understanding of the ROI that you can deliver and a very good understanding of what is a fair open bid, what is a fair floor bid, and knowing where you're going to give up points so that you can maintain your margins and still have a profitable deal. So these are some ideas that I think can help you out. Now, as you are going through this process and you're negotiating this project or the deal, you want to make sure that you realize it's not just about a dollar amount. A dollar amount is certainly an important part, but it includes every aspect of what's in the agreement. All the bonuses, all the savings, the timeline, who is going to do what, by when, what the expected outcome is going to be. You really want to nail down all the specifics in terms of the price, the scope of work, identifying certain services and products that are part of the offer, any warranties that are part of it, terms and conditions that you might be held accountable for, and you want to make sure are very clear, making sure that you document everything. Very, very important. Now, I want you to also realize, as my friend Don Hudson says, sell value, not selling price. Don't compete on price. It's too easy to discount, and it's a negative spiral just going all the way down, because when you compete on price, you erode your margins. And as you erode your margins, it's a terrible business to be in, because now you have to make it up with more volume, assuming you still have a positive margin, and that becomes a very difficult time-intensive business. So you have to be looking at the value. The value is relative to the ROI you can deliver, both in terms of top line revenue growth and cost savings that you're able to deliver through making life easier for an organization or a customer, as well as considering the emotional objective that the customer has, particularly in the B2C space. If you're selling to a consumer like you're Apple and you sell an iPad, you can justify to a certain degree the price of an iPad because of the savings. You can justify to a certain extent, if you're selling to an entrepreneur, how this will help generate more revenue through being able to have better access to your information. But at the end of the day, you're selling a solution that makes their life easier in so many different ways. So understand how what you sell maps into the primary benefit that is a needle mover for your customer. So make sure that you have an end game in place, and as you are wrapping up this overall process, you want to make sure that when the negotiation is complete, number one, both sides need to feel really good about the deal. If you both don't feel good about the deal, there'll be resentment and it will just not end well. Number two, where possible, you want the customer to feel that they got the better end of the deal. And that is the way you want to leave things. Minimum, both sides need to feel that they got a fair deal. Best case scenario, customer really feels that they got the better side of the deal based on the value that you are offering to them. So now, what I want you to do is to take everything that I've shared in this video, which is getting close to about 19 minutes, and see how you can deploy this in your own business. I want you to think about who you negotiate with, start to break down your offer, break down your price, take a look at who the target market is. Ask yourself, can you charge more for what you're doing today? How can you provide more value to substantiate what it is that you charge for? Take a look at the total solution in terms of the bonuses that you can offer to sweeten the deal, to drive a decision, the savings you can offer that are legitimate, that are logical, that make sense, that give your price integrity. Think about how you can do this with the minimal amount of time between going from evaluation to decision, and make sure you're dealing with the right person who can make that decision so that you can move forward and really understand your limits, your top line and your floor level from a negotiation standpoint. And I think this will really help you out. I look forward to your feedback. If you'd like to talk a little bit more about your negotiation strategy for your product or service, just let me know. I'd love to sit down with you and chat with you about how this can be refined so that you can have a more successful outcome. Thanks so much. This is Ray Stendall.